At the precise and irrevocable instant when Representative Adam Schiff, with a demeanor of practiced condescension, verbalized to Dan Bongino regarding the accusation that the latter was merely a promulgator of unfounded conspiracy theories who lacked the requisite cognitive capacity to comprehend the nuances of intelligence operations during a live, nationally televised broadcast, he inadvertently committed the catastrophic error of judgment that so frequently befalls compromised political figures who have grown too comfortable in their authority. He completely neglected to recall that he was currently launching a verbal assault against a distinguished former Secret Service agent and decorated New York Police Department detective who had meticulously dedicated the preceding 5 years of his professional life to the exhaustive and obsessive collection of hard evidence regarding the specific mechanisms by which Schiff had purportedly leaked classified information, disseminated falsehoods regarding Russian collusion, and orchestrated what the former agent characterized as the most extensive and damaging political deception in the annals of American history. The network Newsmax had organized what they were theatrically billing as the intelligence debate. Who lied about Russia? A concept that was deceptively simple in its premise, yet potentially explosive in its execution. The event was designed to place Adam Schiff, the former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, who had spent years asserting with absolute certainty that he possessed direct evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian Federation, in a direct, face-to-face confrontation with Dan Bongino, the former Secret Service agent turned conservative firebrand, who had dedicated years of his podcast and television commentary to exposing what he termed Spygate, the alleged bureaucratic conspiracy to frame Donald Trump with fabricated Russia allegations. Schiff had acceded to this engagement primarily because he operated under the assumption that his credentials as a seasoned Intelligence Committee chairman, his prestigious Ivy League educational background, and his established reputation within the mainstream media ecosystem would grant him an unassailable aura of authority, thereby allowing him to effortlessly dismiss Bongino as a fringe right-wing theorist, defend the integrity of the Mueller investigation, and depart the stage with his credibility not only intact, but perhaps even significantly enhanced by the encounter. Conversely, Bongino had agreed to the debate because he had been strategically waiting 5 long years for this exact pivotal moment. For the entire duration since the inception of Trump's presidency, Bongino had been collecting evidence with the obsessive, laser-like focus of a seasoned detective who had uncovered a case he simply could not abandon. This undertaking was not merely a matter of casual research or internet sleuthing. Rather, it was a full-scale, methodical investigation that involved filing hundreds of Freedom of Information Act requests for Federal Bureau of Investigation documents related to the Russia inquiry, cultivating confidential sources within the intelligence community. Career agents who were profoundly disgusted by the politicization they had witnessed and were willing to communicate with someone possessing credibility, and reading every single page of the Inspector General reports, refusing to rely on the sanitized summaries, but instead delving into the raw data. He had tracked every single media appearance Schiff had made over the years, cataloging each claim, each promise of forthcoming evidence, and each leak that corresponded with classified briefings, while simultaneously working with investigative journalists who had been digging into the origins of the Spygate narrative. He had hired professional researchers to create detailed, irrefutable timelines showing the statistical correlation between Schiff's access to classified information and the appearance of media stories within hours of those briefings, organizing every scrap of data into color-coded binders, red specifically for Steele dossier evidence, blue for Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act abuse documentation, green for leak evidence substantiated by phone records, yellow for the Hunter Biden laptop narratives, orange for the Eric Swalwell double standards, and purple for the destruction of January 6th evidence. Each binder was meticulously equipped with tabs, cross-references, and prepared visual displays ready to be projected on screens. But more than the physical evidence, Bongino had prepared himself mentally for this high-stakes confrontation, practicing in his home studio by running through every possible deflection Schiff might employ and preparing devastating responses. He had recorded himself to refine his delivery, ensuring the passion was palpable yet strictly controlled, ensuring that the anger fueled the presentation rather than overwhelming it, and guaranteeing that every piece of evidence was introduced with absolute clarity and precision. He had shown drafts of his arguments to fellow conservative commentators, to former law enforcement colleagues, and even to legal experts who could advise him if he was crossing any lines of libel or inaccuracy. Most importantly, Bongino had prepared himself for the immense emotional weight of this moment, because for him, this confrontation was not merely about politics, it was deeply personal, stemming from the fact that he had served in the Secret Service protecting presidents from both political parties. He had taken a solemn oath to the Constitution, and he had spent years in law enforcement where evidence was paramount, where one could not simply make claims without proof, where leaking classified information was a career-ending crime. And he had watched Adam Schiff abuse everything Bongino had spent his career defending: intelligence protocols, security clearances, the sacred trust of handling classified information, and the oath to put country before party. Tonight was not just going to be a standard debate. It was destined to be a reckoning, an accounting where a former Secret Service agent was going to hold a corrupt congressman accountable with evidence that could not be denied, spun, or dismissed as conspiracy theory, because it was all documented in official government reports that Schiff could not challenge without accusing the Inspector General, the Mueller investigation, and the FBI itself of being liars. Bongino was not arriving to debate in the traditional sense. He was arriving to prosecute with evidence, with receipts, and with the righteous passion of a former law enforcement officer who had watched a sitting congressman abuse intelligence authority to push a political hoax. What happened in the subsequent 90 minutes would force Adam Schiff to defend lies he had told under oath, explain leaks he had made to friendly journalists, and confront evidence of the biggest political scandal in modern American history, one he had helped orchestrate. If you have ever desired to witness the outcome when a Secret Service agent equipped with receipts confronts the architect of the Russia hoax, this is that moment, and particularly, you must wait until Bongino produces Schiff's own leaked memos at minute 38, causing Schiff's face to transition from an expression of smugness to one of palpable panic. The Newsmax studio in Manhattan was packed to capacity with 400 people, representing the network's largest debate audience ever, and the crowd was overwhelmingly conservative, with MAGA hats and Trump flags visible throughout the venue, alongside a significantly smaller section of Schiff supporters who had made the trip to offer their backing to their congressman. The energy within the room was electric and undeniably hostile. This was not going to be a polite policy discussion, but rather a gladiatorial fight. The stage was set for confrontation, with two chairs facing each other at slight angles, massive high-definition screens behind each participant ready to display evidence, and Greg Kelly at the moderator's desk, looking like a man who knew he was about to witness either the greatest debate or the greatest meltdown in cable news history. Adam Schiff walked out first, to a mixture of boos from the conservative crowd and applause from his small contingent of supporters. He wore a dark suit and looked composed, almost serene, carrying himself with the calm authority of someone who had spent years on cable news defending himself. He had been preparing for this by reviewing his talking points. The Mueller investigation was legitimate. The FBI acted in good faith. Trump obstructed justice, and anyone who disagreed was pushing conspiracy theories simple, effective, and he had used variations of this defense for 5 years. Dan Bongino walked out 30 seconds later to a roar so loud the building shook. The applause, cheers, and chants of Bongino Bongino lasted nearly 2 full minutes, forcing Greg Kelly to gesture repeatedly for quiet. Bongino wore a dark suit but no tie, his trademark look, and carried multiple thick binders, which he sat down next to his chair with a heavy thud audible through his microphone. He looked at Schiff with undisguised contempt, then at the audience with a grin that promised violence, causing Schiff's serene expression to falter slightly when he saw those massive binders. Greg Kelly began his introduction, laying out the format and asking both men to keep it respectful and focused on facts, a request that would last approximately 45 seconds. "Congressman Schiff, your opening statement," Kelly announced. Schiff began in his practiced, measured tone, looking directly at the cameras rather than at Bongino. "Thank you, Greg. I am here tonight because the American people deserve to know the truth about what happened in 2016. Russia interfered in our election. That is not a theory. That is a fact, documented by our intelligence agencies. The Mueller investigation was necessary and legitimate. It found evidence of over 140 contacts between the Trump campaign and Russian operatives. It documented obstruction of justice, and those of us on the Intelligence Committee took our responsibility seriously to investigate these threats to our democracy." He turned to look at Bongino with what he probably thought was gravitas, but came across as condescension. "Mr. Bongino has spent years pushing conspiracy theories, attacking our intelligence agencies, and defending the indefensible. He does not understand intelligence work. He does not understand the evidence we saw. He is a conspiracy theorist who—" "I'm going to stop you right there," Bongino interrupted, his New York accent thick with anger. "Because you just said something that we are going to deal with right now. You said you saw evidence. Let's talk about that evidence, Adam." He opened his first binder. When a Secret Service agent brings binders to a debate, someone is about to have a very bad day. Bongino pulled out a printed interview transcript and held it up. "March 20th, 2017, you went on MSNBC and said, and I am quoting you directly here, I can't go into specifics, but there is more than circumstantial evidence now of Trump-Russia collusion. You said that? Yes or no?" Schiff tried to respond carefully. "What I said was based on the intelligence we were reviewing at the time. I asked, yes or no, did you say you had more than circumstantial evidence of collusion?" Bongino pressed. "The context was, yes or no, I said those words." "Yes," Schiff conceded. "Good. Now let's go through what you said over the next 2 years, Bongino said, displaying a compilation on the screens, comprising dozens of clips of Schiff on various networks, saying he had direct evidence, more than circumstantial evidence, and evidence in plain sight of Trump-Russia collusion. You said it on MSNBC, you said it on CNN, you said it on ABC, NBC, CBS. For 2.5 years, you told the American people you had direct evidence of Trump colluding with Russia." Bongino let the clips play for a full minute, Schiff's own voice filling the studio, saying variations of the same claim over and over. "Now," Bongino said, pulling out a different document, the Mueller report, March 2019. "After 2 years and $40 million, what did Mueller conclude about collusion?" He displayed the key finding on the screens. The investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. Bongino read it aloud slowly, letting each word land. "No collusion. None. Zero. Mueller found nothing." He turned to Schiff, voice rising. "So where is it, Adam? Where is this direct evidence you claim to have for 2.5 years? Where is the more than circumstantial evidence? Where is the evidence in plain sight?" He spread his arms wide. "Produce it. Show us. You have been claiming you had it for years. Mueller couldn't find it. So where is it?" Schiff tried to pivot. "The Mueller report documented." "Documented no collusion," Bongino shouted. "I asked you a simple question. Where is the direct evidence you claim to have? Do you have it, or don't you? The investigation found significant evidence of no collusion. That is what it found, Bongino retorted. Bongino pulled out another document. You know what else it found? That the Steele dossier, that piece of garbage you guys used to get FISA warrants, couldn't be verified. That Christopher Steele's sources were lying. That it was opposition research paid for by the Clinton campaign. All garbage. All of it. He pointed at Schiff accusingly. But you knew that, didn't you? You knew the dossier was garbage. You knew the FBI couldn't verify it. But you pushed it anyway because it gave you an excuse to spy on the Trump campaign. Schiff's composure was cracking. The FISA process involves lying to judges? Bongino cut him off. The Inspector General found 17 errors and omissions in the FISA applications. 17! And you knew about it. You were briefed on it. But you kept pushing the collusion narrative anyway. Bongino's voice became a roar. You lied for 2.5 years. You went on television and told America you had evidence that didn't exist. You pushed a dossier you knew was fake. You helped spy on American citizens based on lies, and when Mueller found nothing, you still didn't admit you were wrong. He grabbed the Mueller report and held it up. This report cleared Trump of collusion. But you spent the next year claiming it showed obstruction. You can't accept that you were wrong, that you lied, that you pushed the biggest political hoax in American history. The audience erupted. The Bongino supporters were on their feet chanting, "Liar, liar, liar." Schiff sat in his chair looking like a man who had just realized he had walked into an ambush. He said he had direct evidence for 2.5 years. Mueller found zero collusion. Bongino wasn't giving Schiff time to recover. He pulled out his second binder, this one labeled Steele Dossier in large letters. Let's talk about the Steele Dossier specifically, because this is where your corruption really shows. Nothing says I've got you like a binder with your name on the scandal. The Steele Dossier was the basis for the FISA warrants on Carter Page, correct? Schiff tried to hedge. It was one piece of evidence among. Was it the basis? Yes or no? It was part of the application. It was the primary basis. The FBI used it as the main justification. Yes or no? It was significant. Yes. Good. Now, the Steele dossier was paid for by the Clinton campaign through Fusion GPS, correct? Opposition research is normal in. Yes or no? Yes. Bongino pulled out bank records, showing money flowing from the Clinton campaign law firm to Fusion GPS to Christopher Steele. The Clinton campaign paid for it, and you knew that. But you never told the American people that the evidence of collusion was opposition research paid for by Trump's opponent. You let people think it was legitimate intelligence. He pulled out more documents, specifically the Inspector General report on FISA abuse. The IG report found that the FBI couldn't verify any of the Steele dossier's claims. None. Zero. They tried. They couldn't verify it. And you knew that. Bongino displayed key findings from the IG report. The FBI was unable to corroborate any of the specific substantive allegations against Carter Page in the Steele reports. You were briefed on this, Adam. You knew the dossier couldn't be verified, but you went on TV anyway and promoted it as credible evidence. He pulled up clips of Schiff defending the FISA applications and citing the dossier as valid intelligence. You knew it was garbage. The FBI couldn't verify it. Steele's sources admitted they lied. The whole thing was political opposition research, dressed up as intelligence. Bongino was building steam, pacing now. And here is the really corrupt part. The FBI altered evidence to get the FISA warrant. He displayed documents showing that FBI lawyer Kevin Kleinsmith had altered an email to make it appear Carter Page was not a CIA source when he actually was. Kleinsmith changed an email from, "Yes, Page is a CIA source," to, "No, he's not. That is fabricating evidence. That is a crime." He pleaded guilty. He turned to Schiff. And you knew about this. You were briefed on it. But did you go on TV and tell America the FBI fabricated evidence? No. You defended them. You attacked anyone who questioned the FISA warrants as conspiracy theorists. Bongino pulled out a list. The IG found 17 errors and omissions in the FISA applications. Let me read some of them. He began reading dramatically. Omitted information from Steele's source that raised doubts about allegations. Failed to inform the court that Steele was working for the Clinton campaign. Altered evidence about Carter Page's CIA relationship. Failed to inform the court when Steele's information couldn't be verified. Omitted exculpatory information that undercut the probable cause showing. He looked up at Schiff. 17, and those aren't mistakes, Adam. Those are lies. Those are deliberate omissions designed to mislead judges into authorizing surveillance on American citizens. Bongino's voice rose to a shout. You knew the dossier was garbage. You knew the FBI couldn't verify it. You knew they altered evidence. But you defended it all because it gave you a weapon against Trump. He walked toward Schiff's chair. You abused your position as Intelligence Committee chairman. You took intelligence meant to protect America and weaponized it for politics. You helped spy on American citizens based on lies. That's not oversight, Adam. That's corruption. His final line was delivered with contempt. The Steele dossier was garbage. The FISA warrants were based on lies. 17 documented errors. FBI lawyer pleaded guilty to fabricating evidence. All proven, all documented. And you knew about all of it, but lied to the American people anyway. Bongino grabbed his third binder, this one thick with tabs sticking out everywhere. Now let's talk about your leaks, because you didn't just lie about Russia. You broke the law by leaking classified information. A former Secret Service agent accusing you of leaking classified info is like a doctor telling you that you have cancer. It's credible and it's bad. As chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, you had access to classified information, correct? Yes, that was my responsibility. And there are laws about what you can and cannot share with journalists, correct? The law provides certain. Yes or no? Are there laws against leaking classified information? Yes. Good. Now, let's look at your pattern of leaks. Bongino displayed a timeline on the screens, showing media stories about the Russia investigation with dates highlighted. February 14, 2017. You have a classified briefing about Flynn. February 14, 2017. 3 hours later, The Washington Post publishes a story with details from that briefing. March 22, 2017. Classified Intel Committee session about Russia. March 22, 2017. Evening. CNN reports details from that closed session. May 2017. Multiple closed Intelligence Committee hearings. May, June 2017. Constant stream of stories with classified details. He looked at Schiff. Every time you had access to classified information, stories appeared in the media within hours. Every single time. Bongino pulled out phone records. And we know you were talking to journalists constantly. Your phone records show hundreds of calls to reporters at the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, and MSNBC during this period. He displayed graphics showing the correlation between Schiff's classified briefings and media stories. You would get briefed on classified intelligence, then immediately call friendly reporters and leak it. And you leaked selectively only the information that made Trump look bad, never the information that undercut the collusion narrative. Bongino pulled out specific examples. The Flynn calls with the Russian ambassador, you leaked that. The Steele dossier briefings, you leaked that. Details from closed Intelligence Committee sessions, you leaked those. FISA warrant information, you leaked that too. He walked across the stage, building intensity. You know how I know you leaked this stuff? Because I was in the Secret Service. I know how classified information works. I know the protocols. I know the laws. And I know that when information from classified briefings appears in the media within hours, it's because someone with access leaked it. He pointed at Schiff. And that someone was you. You were the chairman. You had the access. You had the motivation to push the Russia collusion narrative. And you had the media relationships. Your phone records prove it. Bongino pulled out testimony transcripts. And here is the proof you leaked. When Intelligence Committee members testified under oath in closed sessions, they said there was no evidence of collusion. But when you went on TV after those same briefings, you said there was evidence. He displayed the contradiction. Clint Watt's testimony under oath. I have not seen anything that resembles proof of collusion. Schiff on CNN, same day. The evidence of collusion is in plain sight. You had people testifying under oath that there was no proof, but you went on TV and said there was evidence. Where was that evidence coming from? You were making it up, and you were selectively leaking to create a false narrative. Bongino was shouting now. You leaked classified information to journalists. You violated the law. You abused your position. You took intelligence meant to protect America and leaked it to push a political agenda. He grabbed one of his binders and held it up. I have a whole binder here of your leaks. Dozens of them. All documented. All showing the pattern. You get classified briefing. You leak to media. Story appears within hours. His final assessment was damning. You're not an oversight chairman. You're a leaker. You're a liar. And you used classified intelligence as a political weapon. That's not just wrong, Adam. That's criminal. Bongino wasn't slowing down. He grabbed another section of his materials. Let's fast forward to 2020. The Hunter Biden laptop. You remember that, right? Schiff shifted uncomfortably. He knew where this was going. October 2020. The New York Post publishes stories about Hunter Biden's laptop, emails showing business dealings, big guy getting 10%, all kinds of corruption. You remember that? Laptop was Russian disinformation, was it? Bongino shouted. Because that's what you said. Let me show you. He played a clip of Schiff on CNN saying, We know that this whole smear on Joe Biden comes from the Kremlin. You called it Russian disinformation. You said it came from the Kremlin. But you knew better, didn't you? Bongino pulled out FBI documents. The FBI had that laptop since December 2019. They had verified it was real. They had confirmed it belonged to Hunter. And you knew that. He displayed a timeline. December 2019. FBI takes possession of laptop. October 2020. FBI verifies authenticity. October 2020. NY Post publishes stories. October 2020. Schiff calls it Russian disinformation. You called it Russian disinformation when the FBI had already verified it was real. You lied to influence the election. Bongino pulled out the now infamous letter. And then you helped organize this. He held up the letter signed by 51 former intelligence officials, claiming the laptop had all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation. 51 former intel officials signed this letter saying the laptop was Russian disinformation, and you promoted it. You went on every network claiming it was Russian disinformation. You used your intel committee credibility to push this lie. He displayed more evidence. But we now know the laptop was 100% real. The FBI confirmed it. Hunter Biden's lawyers admitted it. Even the Washington Post and New York Times eventually admitted it. It was real. Bongino walked toward Schiff. So, you lied. You used your position as Intelligence Committee Chairman to lie to the American people. You called real evidence of Biden family corruption Russian disinformation to protect Joe Biden's campaign. He pulled out polling data, and it worked. Polls showed that if voters had known about the laptop, enough would have changed their votes to change the election outcome. Your lie may have changed the election. Bongino's voice was shaking with anger. You used intelligence credibility to lie about evidence of corruption. You helped organize 51 former intel officials to sign a letter calling real evidence fake. You went on TV and lied about it being Russian disinformation when you knew better. He pointed at Schiff accusingly. You interfered in the 2020 election. You used your position to spread disinformation, actual disinformation, to protect Biden. That's not oversight. That's election interference. His final line was delivered with contempt. You spent 4 years claiming Russia interfered in our elections, but you interfered in 2020 by lying about the Hunter laptop. You are exactly what you claim to be fighting. You represent the real election interference. Bongino pulled out what was clearly a folder he had been saving, marked with a photo of Eric Swalwell. Let's talk about your colleague Eric Swalwell and your incredible double standards. Schiff visibly tensed. He knew this was bad. Eric Swalwell, Democrat from California, was on your intelligence committee, correct? Representative Swalwell served. Yes or no? Yes. And Swalwell had a relationship with a Chinese intelligence operative named Fang Fang, also known as Christine Fang, correct? That matter was investigated. Yes or no? Did he have a relationship with a Chinese spy? Schiff couldn't deny what was documented. He had contact with someone who was later identified as a suspected Chinese intelligence operative. He slept with her, Adam. Let's be clear. She was in his office. She helped with fundraising. She placed an intern in his office. And she was a Chinese spy. Bongino displayed photos and documents showing Fang Fang's activities. FBI warned Swalwell she was a Chinese intelligence asset. And you know what you did? Nothing. He stayed on the Intelligence Committee, the committee with access to our nation's most sensitive secrets. And you kept a guy who slept with a Chinese spy on that committee. He pulled out more evidence, but let's compare that to how you treated Republicans. You removed Republicans from committees for far less. You kicked off anyone who questioned the 2020 election. But a Democrat who slept with a Chinese spy? He's fine. He keeps his Intelligence Committee seat. Bongino was pacing now, voice rising. Marjorie Taylor Greene said some crazy things on social media before she was elected. You removed her from committees. Paul Gosar made a controversial video. You removed him from committees. But Swalwell slept with a Chinese spy, and you protected him. He turned to face Schiff directly. Explain that. Explain how a member of Congress who had a relationship with a Chinese intelligence operative keeps his Intelligence Committee seat while you remove Republicans for tweets. Schiff tried to respond. The Republican members you are referring to had Twitter accounts. They didn't sleep with foreign spies. Swalwell did, and you protected him. Bongino pulled out the kicker. And you know, the really rich part? While you were protecting Swalwell, you spent 4 years investigating Republicans for supposedly colluding with Russia. You accused Trump, his campaign, everyone of working with Russia. But your own committee member was literally in bed with a Chinese spy, and you did nothing. He spread his arms wide. That's not oversight. That's not protecting America. That's protecting your political allies while attacking your enemies. That is pure partisan corruption. His final line was delivered with maximum contempt. You kept a Chinese spy's boyfriend on the Intelligence Committee while investigating Americans for phantom Russian collusion. If there was ever evidence you don't actually care about foreign influence, just about attacking Republicans, that is it. Bongino grabbed his final prepared binder, this one labeled J6 Committee. One more thing before we wrap this up. The January 6th Committee. Your latest scam. You know an investigation is corrupt when the investigators destroy the evidence before anyone can review it. You were on the January 6th Committee. You helped run the investigation, correct? I participated in the committee's work, and at the end, the committee destroyed records, deleted evidence, made sure the Republican majority couldn't review your work, correct? Schiff tried to deflect. The committee followed proper procedures. You destroyed evidence, yes or no? Materials were archived according to reports. The committee deleted terabytes of data. You destroyed video evidence. You got rid of witness testimony. You made sure Republicans couldn't review what you had done. Bongino pulled out news reports documenting the destroyed evidence. House rules require committees to preserve records. You violated those rules. You destroyed evidence before Republicans could review it. Why? What were you hiding? He didn't wait for an answer. Let me tell you what you were hiding. The fact that you ran a partisan sham investigation. Bongino listed the problems. You excluded minority representation. You didn't let Republicans pick their own members. You only allowed Republicans who hated Trump. You didn't investigate Nancy Pelosi's security failures. You didn't investigate Ray Epps. You destroyed exculpatory evidence. You edited video to create false narratives. He displayed evidence of edited footage where the committee had cut out context. You took video of Trump's speech and cut out the part where he said peacefully and patriotically. You edited evidence to make it look worse than it was. That is not investigating, that is prosecuting. Bongino's voice rose. And then, when you knew Republicans were going to take over and review your work, you destroyed the evidence. You deleted files. You got rid of testimony. You made sure nobody could check your work. He pointed at Schiff. That is consciousness of guilt. That is what criminals do. They destroy evidence when they know they are about to get caught. His final assessment was brutal. You ran a partisan investigation, you excluded Republicans, you edited evidence, you hid exculpatory information, and then you destroyed the records before anyone could review it. That is not justice. That is a cover-up. Greg Kelly tried to move to closing statements, but Bongino held up his hand. Actually, I want to say something before we close, because I think America needs to understand who Adam Schiff really is. He stood and walked to center stage, all his binders stacked on the table beside him. I was a Secret Service agent. I protected President Obama. I took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. I know what it means to handle classified information. I know what it means to have security clearance. I know what intelligence work actually looks like. He pointed at Schiff. And this man abused everything I swore to protect. Bongino began his comprehensive indictment. For 2.5 years, you told America you had direct evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. Mueller found nothing. You lied. You pushed the Steele dossier as credible intelligence when you knew it was garbage opposition research paid for by Clinton. You lied. You defended FISA warrants obtained through fraud, with 17 documented errors and an FBI lawyer who fabricated evidence. You knew, and you lied. You leaked classified information to journalists hundreds of times. Your phone records prove it. You broke the law. You called Hunter Biden's laptop Russian disinformation when the FBI had verified it was real. You lied to influence an election. You protected Eric Swalwell, who slept with a Chinese spy while attacking Republicans for far less. You are a hypocrite. You destroyed January 6th committee evidence before Republicans could review it. You are hiding something. He let that list hang in the air, then continued. Every single thing I have said tonight is documented. Inspector General reports, Mueller report findings, phone records, FBI documents, congressional testimony, video evidence, all facts, all proven, all undeniable. Bongino's voice became harder. You are not an oversight chairman. You are a partisan operative who weaponized intelligence for political purposes. You lied to the American people for years. You pushed the biggest political hoax in modern history. You leaked classified information. You abused your security clearance. You interfered in elections with disinformation. He walked toward Schiff. And here is what really makes me angry. As a former law enforcement officer, you damaged America's intelligence agencies. You politicized them. You made half the country distrust them. You weaponize them against your political enemies. His voice rose to its crescendo. I spent years protecting presidents. I know what it means to put country before politics. And you? You put politics before everything. Before truth. Before country. Before your oath. Bongino pointed at the binders on the table. I brought receipts tonight. Every lie you told, every leak you made, every abuse of power, all documented, all proven. He turned to the cameras. America! This is what corruption looks like. This is what happens when politicians weaponize intelligence. This is what happens when someone puts party before country. He turned back to Schiff for his final line. You spent 5 years calling Trump and his supporters a threat to democracy. But you are the threat. You lied about collusion. You spied on Americans. You leaked classified info. You interfered in elections. You destroyed evidence. His final words were delivered with quiet intensity. You are not a defender of democracy, Adam. You are a threat to it. And tonight, with these binders full of evidence, I have proven it. The audience erupted into the longest standing ovation of the night, lasting over 3 minutes. Chants of Schiff lied, and lock him up filled the studio. Schiff sat frozen in his chair, unable to respond. Everything Bongino had presented was based on documented evidence. IG reports, Mueller findings, phone records, FBI documents. He couldn't deny facts. He couldn't dismiss evidence. He could only sit there as his lies were exposed in front of millions. The video exploded across every platform with unprecedented velocity for a cable news debate. Within 2 hours, 24 million views across YouTube, Twitter, Rumble, and other platforms. Within 24 hours, 89 million views. Within 1 week, 156 million total views. One of the most watched political confrontations in cable news history. Schiff lied became the #1 trending topic on Twitter within minutes and stayed there for 4 straight days. Bongino's receipts trended simultaneously. Conservative social media was flooded with clips, memes, and celebrations of what they saw as complete vindication. Conservative media went into complete overdrive, treating the debate as the vindication they had been waiting for since 2016. Fox News played the full 90-minute debate 3 times in the first 24 hours, then created a special documentary-style program breaking down each of Bongino's evidence presentations with additional context and expert analysis. Sean Hannity dedicated an entire week of shows to the debate's revelations, bringing on former FBI agents, intelligence community whistleblowers, and legal experts to verify each piece of evidence Bongino had presented. Tucker Carlson did a segment titled "The Schiff Finally Hit the Fan" that became one of his most viewed episodes ever. Laura Ingraham had Bongino on for an extended interview where he went even deeper into the evidence, showing documents he hadn't had time to present during the debate itself. Newsmax, which had hosted the debate, saw its ratings skyrocket. The debate night became the highest-rated program in the network's history. Their decision to give Bongino free rein to present evidence without interference was hailed as a watershed moment in conservative media. Proof that when given an unfiltered platform, conservative arguments could be devastating. The network immediately announced a follow-up special, The Evidence, a deep dive into what Bongino revealed, featuring hours of additional documentation. The Bongino Report, Dan's news aggregation website, crashed repeatedly from traffic in the days following the debate. When it came back online, it became the most visited conservative news site in America for 3 straight weeks. His podcast episode about the debate was downloaded 47 million times in the first week, a record that stood for months. Conservative book publishers called offering 7-figure advances for a book about the debate and the evidence. Speaking fees for Bongino events tripled overnight. But more significantly than the conservative media celebration, even mainstream outlets couldn't completely ignore what had happened. The viewership numbers were too massive. 156 million views meant this had penetrated far beyond the conservative bubble. CNN, which had employed Schiff as a regular commentator for years, was forced to address the debate. Their segments were defensive, with panels trying to contextualize Schiff's claims and dismiss Bongino's evidence as cherry-picked or lacking context, but their own fact-checkers, when pressed, had to acknowledge uncomfortable truths. Yes, Mueller did not establish collusion. Yes, the Inspector General did find 17 errors in FISA applications. Yes, the Steele dossier was paid for by the Clinton campaign and couldn't be verified. Yes, the Hunter laptop was real, not Russian disinformation. MSNBC tried to defend Schiff more aggressively, bringing him on for sympathetic interviews where he could explain himself, but even these backfired. Rachel Maddow's interview with Schiff, intended to rehabilitate him, became a viral moment when she asked about his direct evidence claims, and he gave a rambling, evasive answer that satisfied no one. The clip of his evasion got more views than the original debate segments. Even MSNBC's audience, heavily liberal and predisposed to support Schiff, showed declining confidence in him, according to the network's own internal polling. The New York Times, which had published countless stories sourced from Schiff's leaks during the Russia investigation, ran a surprisingly balanced piece titled, "Schiff Faces Reckoning Over Russia Investigation Claims." While the article defended the legitimacy of the FBI's initial concerns about Russian interference, it acknowledged that Schiff's repeated claims of direct evidence of collusion that Mueller never found had damaged his credibility. The piece quoted former Schiff allies, saying privately that he had oversold the evidence and should have been more careful with his language. The Washington Post published an analysis piece examining every time Schiff had claimed to have evidence of collusion, comparing those claims to Mueller report findings. While the piece included extensive context and Schiff's defenses, the core fact remained undeniable. He had claimed direct evidence for over 2 years, and the $40 million investigation found none. Their fact-checker, Daniel Dale, gave Schiff's direct evidence claims a rating that, while carefully worded, essentially concluded he had misled the public. Legal experts began appearing on television discussing potential consequences for Schiff's conduct. Former federal prosecutors noted that leaking classified information, if proven, carried criminal penalties. Legal scholars debated whether Schiff's speech or debate clause protections as a congressman would shield him from prosecution for leaks. Civil liberties organizations that had previously defended Schiff began expressing concern about the FISA abuses he had defended, with the ACLU publishing a statement calling for reforms to prevent future surveillance abuses, a statement conservatives cited as vindication of Bongino's arguments. Political polling showed dramatic shifts in public opinion. Did Adam Schiff lie about Trump-Russia collusion? Before debate, 54% Republicans believed he lied. After debate, 73% of all voters believed he lied. Should the FBI's conduct in the Russia investigation be investigated further? Before debate, 48% yes. After debate, 68% yes. Do you trust Adam Schiff? Before debate, 31% among all voters. After debate, 19% among all voters. The phrase direct evidence became toxic for Schiff. Every time he appeared on television afterward, he was asked about his claims of having direct evidence of collusion that Mueller never found. Conservative commentators made montages of his direct evidence claims juxtaposed with Mueller's did not establish findings. Congressional Republicans announced investigations into Schiff's leaks, calling for phone records to be subpoenaed to prove he had leaked classified information to journalists. Several called for him to be censured or expelled from Congress for abuse of his Intelligence Committee position. While these didn't lead to immediate action, they kept the scandals in the news cycle. The Hunter Biden laptop story experienced a resurrection. What had been dismissed as Russian disinformation with Schiff's help was now universally acknowledged as real. Multiple polls showed that had voters known about the laptop's contents, it would have changed the election outcome. Schiff's role in calling it Russian disinformation became Exhibit A in conservative arguments about media and intelligence community bias. The 51 intelligence officials who had signed the letter calling the laptop Russian disinformation faced calls to have their security clearances revoked. Several former officials publicly regretted signing it. The letter became a symbol of intelligence community political bias, with Schiff cited as the architect. Schiff himself went into immediate damage control mode, but every attempt seemed to make things worse. His initial statement defending his intelligence committee work was torn apart on social media within minutes. He tried to appear on friendly shows to explain himself, but hosts who had previously given him softball questions were now pressing him on specifics. Anderson Cooper, who had hosted Schiff dozens of times on CNN, asked him directly, "Did you mislead the public when you said you had direct evidence of collusion?" Schiff's evasive answer, "I was speaking to the overall pattern of evidence we were seeing," satisfied no one and became another viral clip, showing him unable to defend his claims. He tried to write an op-ed for the New York Times, explaining his position, but even that backfired. The piece, titled "Why I Stand by My Russia Investigation Work," made claims that were immediately fact-checked and disputed by conservatives armed with Inspector General reports and Mueller findings. The comments section was brutal, with even Times readers expressing skepticism about his explanations. The piece ended up generating more negative attention than if he had stayed silent. Democratic leadership began quietly distancing themselves from Schiff in a way they never had before. Nancy Pelosi, when asked about the debate at a press conference, gave a curt, "I haven't watched it," and refused to answer follow-up questions. Chuck Schumer said, "Every member speaks for themselves," and walked away from reporters. Other Democrats who had previously praised Schiff's Russia investigation work suddenly had nothing to say about him. The message was clear. He was on his own, and the party wasn't going to defend him anymore. His Senate campaign, which had been announced before the debate as a safe bet given California's Democratic lean, suddenly faced serious headwinds. Internal polling showed his favorability, dropping even among Democrats, particularly those who had believed his direct evidence claims and now felt betrayed. Republican opponents immediately began running ads featuring clips from the Bongino debate. Even his Democratic primary opponents started subtly distancing themselves, referring to the need for fresh leadership and moving beyond the divisions of the Trump-era coded language that everyone understood meant Schiff is damaged goods. The House Ethics Committee, now controlled by Republicans after the 2022 midterms, announced investigations into Schiff's conduct as Intelligence Committee chairman. They subpoenaed his phone records to examine the leak allegations Bongino had made. They requested all communications between Schiff and journalists, and they called for testimony from Intelligence Committee staff about his handling of classified information. While Democrats dismissed this as political revenge, polls showed that 68% of Americans thought the investigations were justified given the evidence Bongino had presented. 3 months after the debate, Schiff made a surprising announcement. He would not seek re-election to the House of Representatives after all, instead focusing solely on his Senate campaign. Political analysts saw it as a strategic retreat, getting out of the House before ethics investigations could result in formal censure, or worse, and hoping a Senate race in deep blue California could rescue his political career. But the decision was widely interpreted as an admission that remaining in the House was no longer tenable given Republican control and the evidence of his conduct that Bongino had exposed. Dan Bongino himself became an even bigger conservative media star. But more importantly, he had accomplished something rare in modern political discourse. He had held a powerful politician accountable with evidence in a format that couldn't be ignored or dismissed. His podcast consistently topped all charts for months after the debate. His social media following exploded, growing by over 3 million across platforms. His book about Spygate, which had been published 2 years earlier, returned to the New York Times bestseller list and stayed there for 18 weeks. Speaking invitations flooded in. He was booked solid for a year, with appearances at conservative conferences, Republican Party events, and even university campuses where conservative student groups wanted him to present the evidence he had shown against Schiff. But beyond the personal success, Bongino had achieved something more significant. He had changed the narrative about the Russia investigation in a way that no congressional hearing or Inspector General report had managed to do. By confronting Schiff directly with evidence in a format millions could watch, he had made it impossible for mainstream media to continue dismissing concerns about FISA abuse, Steele dossier problems, and Schiff's lies as mere conspiracy theories. The evidence was now part of the public record in a way that couldn't be ignored. 1 year after the debate, when people discussed the Russia investigation, they no longer cited Adam Schiff as a credible authority. Instead, they cited the Inspector General reports, the Mueller findings, and the evidence Bongino had compiled. The debate had fundamentally altered who Americans trusted on intelligence matters, not the Ivy League congressman with the Intelligence Committee gavel, but the former Secret Service agent with the receipts. Bongino had gotten his vindication not in a congressional hearing where Schiff could hide behind procedure, not in an FBI investigation that might be politicized, but on live television, with binders full of receipts exposing lies that could no longer be denied. This wasn't just a debate. This was a prosecution. Dan Bongino didn't come to discuss policy or exchange viewpoints. He came to expose Adam Schiff as a liar, a leaker, and a corrupt official who had weaponized intelligence for political purposes. For 90 minutes, with documents, evidence, and the credibility of a former Secret Service agent, he put Schiff's record on trial in front of millions. The direct evidence of collusion that never existed. The Steele dossier that was garbage opposition research. The FISA abuses with 17 documented errors. The classified leaks to friendly journalists. The Hunter laptop Russian disinformation lie. The protection of Swalwell despite Chinese spy connections. The destruction of January 6th. Evidence, all of it documented, all of it proven, all of it undeniable. Schiff had spent 5 years as a media darling, appearing on every network to push the Russia collusion narrative, protected by mainstream journalists who never challenged his claims, but put him on stage with someone who had compiled the evidence, who understood intelligence procedures, who had law enforcement credibility, and who wasn't afraid to call him a liar. And the house of cards collapsed. The receipts were undeniable. Mueller found no collusion, documented in his report. The FISA warrants were obtained through fraud, documented by the Inspector General. The Steele dossier was unverified garbage, documented by FBI records. The Hunter laptop was real, confirmed by the FBI and Hunter's own lawyers. The January 6th committee destroyed evidence, documented by multiple reports. These weren't conspiracy theories. They were facts. Schiff had managed to avoid confronting directly until that debate. The media had protected him. Democrats had defended him. But on a stage with a former Secret Service agent who had done his homework and brought receipts, there was nowhere to hide. Adam Schiff spent 5 years calling Trump and his supporters threats to democracy, claiming he had evidence of the greatest political crime in history. But when confronted with actual evidence of his own lies, leaks, and abuses of power, he had no defense, no explanation for why Mueller found no collusion despite his direct evidence claims, no justification for pushing a dossier he knew was garbage, no excuse for calling real evidence Russian disinformation to influence an election. Bongino proved something crucial. Law enforcement credibility matters. When a former Secret Service agent and NYPD detective says, "You broke the law, leaked classified information, and abused your position," and backs it up with documented evidence, it cuts through partisan spin. If you think Adam Schiff should be held accountable for lying about collusion, leaking classified information, and abusing his Intelligence Committee position? Share this story. Comment, Schiff lied. If you remember his direct evidence claims that Mueller never found, because Bongino just exposed it all with evidence that can't be denied, and the receipts don't lie.